Doom is one of the most influential games ever created, and it had one of the biggest roles to play in the beginning of the first-person shooter genre. Originally released in 1993 and developed by id Software, Doom managed to sell 3.5 million copies, along with 1.15 million shareware copies being downloaded. That was in the time span from its release in 1993 all the way up till 1999, which for a game back then that was absolutely huge. If you've seen any other videos about this game on YouTube, you're probably sick of hearing that it was downloaded more than Windows was.
These games are getting really realistic.
Since then, the game has spawned a huge franchise with 7 mainline entries, an absolute mountain of ports for those games, a bunch of spin-offs, and one of the best movies ever made. Oh, and also this war crime of a movie. The game was a technical marvel upon its debut, boasting at the time extremely impressive and realistic graphics. They may not look like much now, but back then this was the peak of realism. And despite the age of the game holds up extremely well in the modern day, and still manages to keep a decent level of popularity within its community, due to the many console ports there is and the absolutely huge modding scene. But the mods is not what we're going to look at today. No, we're going to be looking at the game's legendary first episode, Knee Deep in the Dead. That was absolutely atrocious. This is one of the most iconic levels in all of gaming. However, it can be completed in about 30 seconds. In fact, the world record for this level is 7 seconds. Nonetheless, you start off with the pistol, which is completely useless, because when you're playing on Ultra Violence, the hardest difficulty that isn't Nightmare, you will find a shotgun guy basically as soon as you start the game, and once he's killed, he'll drop a shotgun, so you don't really need to use the pistol. Something cool about Doom, and also a lot of other FPS games from this era, is that changing the difficulty doesn't just change enemy values and health, but it also changes where they're positioned in the game. So depending on what difficulty you pick, the enemy placements could be much different. However, that really shouldn't matter, because Doom is probably one of the easiest games from this era. That might be because I played it a lot, or it's because it just generally is easy, because I've also played games such as Quake a lot, and they're still more challenging than this. But yeah, anyway, I got the shotgun and killed all 3 types of enemies that were introduced in this level, which are the Zombie Man, Imp, and the previously mentioned shotgun guy. Then once I did that, I went and found every secret in this level, and ended the level. We get this cool intermission screen, and then we move on to the next level. Welcome to the nuclear plant, the level where you would have originally gotten the shotgun had you not gotten it from the shotgunner in the first area. Here we see the introduction of the game's most important mechanic, the keycard system. This is basically what the entire game is built around. You can find red, blue and yellow keycards that help you progress into different areas. These areas are necessary to progress through the rest of the game, and it often makes a lot of the game's levels feel like large mazes. You know, mazes full of deadly monsters. We also see the introduction of 2 new weapons in this level, which would be the chain gun and the chainsaw. Not to be mixed up, as they both do very different things obviously. The chainsaw is great for dealing with certain types of enemies that I'm going to mention later in the video, and it also has infinite ammo. The chain gun now lets you mow through the enemies with a large hail of bullets. It also uses the same ammo as your pistol, which makes the pistol completely obsolete now, if it wasn't already obsolete anyway. But that's about all this level introduces, so let's move on. This is one of my favourite levels in the game. It is packed with enemies and explosive barrels to blow up said enemies with. And it also introduces the Pink Demon, or Pinky. The Pinky is basically a big wall of anger that rushes at you to try and get a big chomp out of you. He's best put down by using the chainsaw, as it stun locks him and prevents him from being able to do anything. Or he'll take 3 shots from the shotgun, maybe 2 if you're lucky, because of how the game's RNG works. The rest of this level is pretty standard though. Shoot large amounts of enemies, find keycards, open doors, move on. However, it does show off what would have been at the time extremely impressive lighting technology. Oh, and it also has one of the best and most iconic music tracks in the entire series. Although, that now leads us into... Command Control feels like one of the more fast-paced levels, and fittingly, it has one of the coolest music tracks too. This level is far more open than any we had seen previously, and it gives the player a lot more room to move around, until you get to this bit here, but still. This level is where you would have got the chain gun if you hadn't found it in the secret earlier. However, apart from that, it doesn't really have much new to introduce. Apart from the rocket launcher, which is awesome by the way. But due to the lack of new things apart from the rocket launcher that it introduces, let's move on. Welcome to Phobos Lab. This is probably what I would say is the best level in probably the entire classic Doom series. This level boasts an absolute horde of enemies, and some really fun encounters, such as this one through the window, this one where you get attacked from two sides, and also this one here. It introduces us to a new enemy as well, which is the Spectre, which is basically a fuzzy pinky. It's meant to be an invisible pinky, but I think later games did this much better, such as Doom 64 and both the new Doom games. But yeah, we mow our way through all these enemies and move on to... Entering Central Processing. And moving down this way, we come across this big room of explosive barrels, and enemies that unfortunately stand way too close to these barrels. This level doesn't really introduce us to anything new, however it is quite large and it has a lot of key cards for us to find. 3, just like every other level. But due to the level's lack of new things to introduce, I don't really have much to say on it, so let's move on. In all honesty, for some reason, I've never really enjoyed this level. I just really don't like it, and I don't know why, because it's a fine level, it's just there's something about it that gets under my skin. It might be because it feels like it drags on a bit too long, and it's kind of boring to me, but I don't know. And for that reason, I really don't want to talk about it. So you know what I'm going to do? Not talk about it. It's quite large and quite mazy, which is great, but other than that, I have nothing else to say on it, so yeah, let's move on. Oh, the dog just wandered in. Just say hi, Tony. Just say hi. Hi. This is the final level of the game, Phobos Anomaly. We open with this very satisfying bit where we get to blow up a bunch of pinkies with these explosive barrels. We then make our way to this star-shaped room, which is where we have our first boss fight, which isn't really a boss fight and more of an introduction to a new enemy, who's going to show up later in the game's campaign in the future episodes. This guy's called the Baron of Hell, and he'll be seen a lot more like I said. The room is also full of specters and explosive barrels too. This is the only part in the entire episode where I actually died, and it's because I got stuck behind a bunch of explosive barrels. But yeah, that's the end of the first episode of Doom. But now that we've finished it, what do we do now? Well, maybe you'd be interested in some more classic FPS games, and if you are, I recommend watching my video on Blood, appearing right here.